Welcome to Uplink. This is my take on what if Mace Windu survived. This is an idea that I've always kind of had in the back of my head, and I wanted to write it down and have an experience of kind of where I would expect it to go, and maybe even lead it into something deeper. So, this is my take on my little fan fiction of what if Mace Windu survived Order 66 and falling out of the window. Where would he go? What would happen? If you do enjoy this video, do consider please subscribing and clicking the notification bell for more videos like this one. Mace Windu fell. He fell for what seemed like ages, all the way down to the grungy streets at the base of the building. His hand was gone, and he was weakened to the point of death. But he held on. He had to stay conscious. The Jedi Order needed him, so he fought every cell in his body, telling him to give up, to stay alive and to make it through this. He called upon the Force, pulling on the energy all around him. There wasn't much in terms of flora and fauna on Coruscant, but there were people and small animals Windu was able to pull Force energy from. Mace had mastered the art of strength from both sides of the Force without falling prey to the dark side, and he used that strength to his advantage. With all that he had, he stood up and made his way to the nearest friend he could find. But Yoda was nowhere to be found. So Mace snuck his way into the medical lab and tended to his wounds, vowing to end the reign of Palpatine. After sneaking into the medical facility in the Jedi Temple, Mace Windu was feeling better. His hand was gone, but he was no longer feeling the effects of Palpatine's attack. But Mace was alone and on the run. Everywhere he turned, he saw clone troopers. He didn't know the full story, but he was able to gather that the Jedi's imminent end was near. How did it happen? How was Palpatine able to sneak under their noses? The Lord of the Sith, the return of the Sith, and the turning of the clones, all right in front of them this whole time? No, he couldn't think of that right now. Mace needed to get away from the upper city and off-planet to find Yoda. He would know what to do, if he wasn't dead already. As dangerous as it was, he needed information, and information was found not in the Shining City, but in the underworld. The stench was strong. The smell of garbage, oil, and something Mace Windu couldn't quite place. And honestly, he didn't really want to. Whatever it wasn't pleasant. It had been almost a week since he fell from the open window after his betrayal by both Skywalker and Palpatine. He had snuck into the temple for healing, but now he was on to searching for information on the Jedi, with a focus on one in particular. But first, he needed to find a suitable replacement for his missing hand. He searched the underworld for who he was looking for. After being here for almost a week, Mace was able to place himself pretty well. Having been to the underworld of Coruscant a few times before, he had heard rumors of a talented, if somewhat unsavory body mod shop dozens of levels below. On his way there, he spotted trouble. It looked as if some thugs had gotten their hands on some clone armor and decided to play God. The armor barely fit over their muscles, and they just caught wind of Mace. The thugs in the stolen clone armor turned to Mace Windu. They had murder in their eyes. On the floor below them lay the last guy they tore apart. His arms lay feet away from his lifeless form. Mace couldn't tell where his head was. He needed to play this safe. He had to keep his lightsaber hidden and his true identity a secret, so he called on the Force to aid him in his movement. If he could disable the three men long enough to escape, he'd be okay. Now, this was easier said than done. Mace was down a few digits, and his body was still pretty beat up from the fall. But he'd faced worse odds before. The biggest of the three lunged forward, trying to grab Mace. He easily slipped past and was able to direct a powerful hit right in the gap between his helmet and chest. The thug lay on the ground motionless. The other two were stunned and easily disabled in the same manner. Mace continued further down. The dripping of water down the side of the walls of the underworld of Coruscant woke Mace Windu. The water had begun to collect on his hood. Standing up and wiping off the caked-on grime, Mace looked around. Not much light came down this far and quickly lost track of time. Even if you did have an idea of what time it was, the city kept on going. Mace had found a crevice between a rundown speeder and a wall that he deemed safe enough to rest. It was the first time he truly tried to get some sleep since his fall. His goal? Find the mod shop, which thankfully he was almost near. Squeezed in the middle of two bars was the smallest shop you could fit an establishment in. A broken sign barely buzzed, but it read in Orbesh, Tycho's Mod Shop. But half the letters were gone. Mace readied his story and walked in. The inside of the shop was chaotic. Electronic parts hung from the ceiling. Droids tried buzzing to life. Mechanical arms clenched and relaxed, and behind all of this disorder was a tall and painfully thin Kaminoan, like he had missed several decades of meals. The space around his eyes sunken to the point of looking fake and glassy. His arms and legs were a mismatch of the most advanced parts Mace Windu had ever seen. Mace had been to many worlds in his time, but nothing quite replicated the dark mess he found in the mod shop, or the almost ghostly alien it held. As soon as he entered, without looking up, Tycho spoke. "Mace Windu, you've fallen quite far from where you once resided, haven't you?" Mace was stunned. He was hidden under layers and layers of coverings. The cover story, a lost trader who had bought a broken lightsaber and accidentally cut off his hand, left his mind as quickly as his name left the mouth of a Kaminoan. But he quickly composed himself. The silence was immediate. Tycho, the almost ghostly Kaminoan, was now looking directly at him, the giant hollow eyes reading his soul. "I have a message for you, Mace, but first, you need assistance." Tycho reached over the counter and lifted the robe from Windu's missing appendage. He held it in his bony hand, looking it over, then dropped it almost as quickly. He went to the back and rummaged through the piles and sorted through the drawers in the walls. Once he seemed like he had found what he was looking for, Tycho returned and started his work. Mace was tempted to ask for clarification, but knew he would get no response until the work was done. It was excruciatingly painful. Mace gritted his teeth and braced himself, but it went by quickly. This guy was good. When the job was done, Mace appreciated the craftsmanship, turning his new hand back and forth. And then he turned to Tycho and asked what the message was. The rain seemed constant in the underworld of Coruscant, and Mace didn't quite understand where it was coming from. It was almost as if the lower levels had their own climate. The neon signs buzzed, the city life hummed with activity, and Mace was waiting for someone he had never met. He would admit it to no one but himself, but that discussion with Tycho was disturbing. How did he know that he was still alive? Mace had never even met the man in person, just heard of the skills he possessed. It took only a week for someone to recognize him. Who else knew? And was he prepared for who came next? Mace pondered this while he waited. He had gotten directions on when and where to meet, but when Mace asked who, Tycho smirked and just said look for a familiar face. And just as he was thinking about who it could be, a clone without armor came over to his table. "Hello, Windu," he said. "Well, hello, Rex. Didn't expect to see you this far down." "You look terrible, sir." Mace felt it too. He had been living on the streets of Coruscant for over a week, going from hidden alcove to alleyway to behind dumpsters. It had been way too long since he had showered and way too long since he'd had a decent meal. Mace was able to regain a lot of his strength through meditation, but he did miss the food at the temple. "Yeah, Rex, I do. But you don't look half bad. What happened out there?" Rex rested his head on his hands. "I'm not sure, but us clones had chips installed in our skulls to follow a very specific set of orders. I had mine taken out before, but I'm a minority. They're all gone, sir. The Jedi." Mace had felt it. It happened slowly, but he could tell something was wrong. The Force was off. He didn't know how to put it, but it was out of balance. "Rex, where's Yoda?" Mace and Rex were deep underground, even further than where Mace had been surviving for so long. The underground had a smell, dank and metallic, as well as the trademark stench of the Coruscant underworld. Mace wasn't exactly clear on where they were going. They abandoned the neon-filled streets, and the deeper they went, the darker and more depressing the surroundings. The feeling of the walls falling in was almost overwhelming. Mace took a deep, deliberate breath, centering the Force, and the feeling went away. The dwellings around them were packed tightly, almost like they were scrambling upwards like plants reaching for the light. Riddling the streets were giant gas pipes with excess exhaust floating up and laying heavy on the ceilings. They arrived at wherever they were going, and Rex knocked on one of the mechanical tunnel entrances, and the door noisily scraped open, revealing a somber group gathered around a table. A hollow screen flickered blue, revealing a news title, and the deformed face of Palpatine circled around. Seeing Palpatine's face was difficult to fully overcome. Mace felt the rage well up inside of him. The Sith were under their noses this entire time, and a senator was able to fully overthrow the Republic. Everything they fought for lost the moment Mace flew out the window. That Skywalker boy, the rage he felt, the betrayal of what the Jedi stood for, the corruption by Palpatine, it stung deep as the headline floated across. Palpatine, leader of the First Galactic Empire, as the Jedi betrayed the Republic. "Rex, I need to get back. I need to stop this." "Sir, with all due respect, that's not possible. If you step inside the Jedi Temple, you will be destroyed and any chance of victory will be gone. We have to bide our time, and we have to find other survivors. Mace knew Rex was right. We needed help, and we needed to find hope. It was time they left the planet. Coruscant was too dangerous to stay, and any Jedi that were still here were more than likely already gone. They were crouched behind storage crates containing who knows what. The almost acidic mist surrounded them. Mace, Rex, and the remaining few that needed escape scattered throughout the hangar. They were much closer to the cityscape Mace once called home. The air didn't have the dank smell of the underground, but the fumes from the transport vehicles was strong. They had made it this far without drawing the attention of the enemy clones or the scum that controlled the streets on each level, but they needed to play it safe. The patrols this close to the hangars were getting more frequent. They timed out their movements. Every 10 minutes another patrol came through, checking the perimeter. But the patrols had changed. No longer were they sticking to just the perimeter. They'd started searching deeper inside. And as they moved further in, they discovered a few of the others. Mace looked at Rex, and they knew it was time to fight. Mace Windu jumped over the crates, and for the first time since his encounter with Palpatine, he ignited his lightsaber. The purple blade expanded, the light cast everything in the same colored hue, and he focused on the task at hand. The last few remnants of his own order, and the success of his mission relied on him making it off this planet, and learning how deep the corruption had covered the galaxy. Screams rang through the air, bringing Mace back into the moment. The hidden that were discovered tried to play off their situation as mere bad luck or circumstance, but the clones weren't buying it. There were maybe 20 to 30 clones in all spread throughout the hangar. Most weren't alerted yet, but that was before Mace had appeared behind the clone that had forced one of their party to the ground and had their blaster pointed at the others. In one swift motion, Mace had taken out the squad of 3. He helped the man get to his feet and told them to prepare for battle. A battle was upon them all. Squads of clones ran to surround them. Mace and Rex were back to back in the middle of the onslaught. They had taken out the first team with ease, Mace wielding the blade with deadly accuracy. And Rex, a true captain, was able to keep up the pace with a skilled Jedi. They struck down the final clone and moved deeper into the hangar. They had lost a couple members of their crew to the clones, but had to keep moving, unable to give them the proper send-off they deserved. The hangar was mostly filled with replacement parts of vessels. Clone transport vehicles hung from cranes, half dismantled with cables dangling from the exposed shell. It wasn't looking hopeful for finding a ship that would make it off the ground or carry the crew looking to escape off-world. Mace looked around, searching for a ship whole enough to fly without success. Then he heard it. There was a deep, thundering echo heading their way. Lumbering their way was an ATTE. It was worse for wear, almost like it had come straight from the Clone Wars. Mace and Rex looked at each other, nodded, and Rex led the others into the hangar to continue their hunt for a vehicle off-world. Mace Windu readied himself. He ignited his lightsaber and positioned his body for best maneuverability. Almost as if it had noticed this, the vehicle turned and quickened its pace towards Mace. Mace took one breath, then another, and ran towards the beast of a vehicle. Using the Force to quicken his moves and allow even greater agility, Mace dodged each of the shots from the cannons. One nearly grazed his arms, but he was able to move out of the way quick enough, feeling the searing heat fly past as he continued onward. Mace was able to disarm the cannons and slice through the motivators. As clones poured out of the transport, in front of him lay the wreckage of the ATTE. Mace heard the noise of a ship, but turned to find Rex at the controls. As Mace Windu, Rex, and the rest of the crew flew over the cityscape of Coruscant, there was a tinge of sadness they all held. The further they got from the events of the last week, the harder it hit them. The loss, the turmoil, and the relief flooded over them as they left the atmosphere and turned to each other to plan their next stop. To end the reign of the Empire and avenge the lost members of the movement. Mace didn't know what to expect or how to fully approach bringing down the corruption, but if they had survived, there must have been others who they could help. Others they could use. Down below on the planet, Order 66 raged on. Hordes of clones hunted down the Jedi and any that tried to get in their way. But one group was even more skilled than the rest, one whose armor was designed to withstand more damage and whose skills were legendary. A group that was familiar with Mace Windu's tactics and strategy, having served under him before. The Republic commandos were given express orders to track down the more difficult Jedi, and they didn't fail. Thanks for watching this fan fiction. Would greatly appreciate hearing your thoughts, and if this is how you would expect it or not, let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear your thoughts and what you'd like to see next in Star Wars Uplink and Star Wars Uplink's fan fiction. definitely do consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell.